to see you. Thanks for coming out. Nice to see you folks online. Let's start by setting our motivation as per the usual. All right. And so if you feel comfortable, you can join me in this prayer. And if this prayer is new to you or you're not quite there yet, just connecting with the most positive, most altruistic reason for having a session like this tonight. Sangyeyan Hurang Zogi Chonam La Janchu Badu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Chunyan Gi Pe Sonam Gi Drola Benje Zangi Drupa Sho Sangye Churang Zogi Chonam La Janchu Badu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Junyangi Pe Sonamgi Drola Ben Sange Drupa Sho Sange Yajuru Zogi Jonamla Janju Badu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Junyangi Sonamgi Drola Benji Sange Drupa Sho. And taking a moment to let the motivation sink in and reconnect. Okay. So tonight I'm going to talk about spiritual practice pitfalls and spiritual practice supports. And it's part of a larger conversation of what we're going to be doing this weekend about building and deepening your meditation practice. And it's nice timing because it's the new year, so might as well kind of have a dust off, refresh, recalibrate. I'm sure everyone in a session like this already has some kind of spiritual path. So we're probably not starting fresh, like ethics are a good idea. You probably have something going on already, right? And probably have for many years. And I think this particular presentation is very straightforward, very easy to understand, and also something worth revisiting perhaps annually. Just to keep energy, to keep momentum, to keep connection with your spiritual path, so that it has the most opportunity to really take you where you want it to go joyfully, not as a chore, right? Or not as a burden, or not as something that you've kind of taken for granted and haven't zhuzhed up in a while. Obviously, zhuzhing is a technical term. Okay, so I thought we'd start about just kind of naming some of the issues that happen for our spiritual practice pitfalls. So the classics are performative practice and pressurized practice. All right, these are the classic pitfalls. Performative practice is like motivated by perceived external pressure, kind of like, ta-da, I'm a Buddhist, right? It's a little bit obnoxious and painful also, right? And then you have pressurized practice, which is motivated by like harshly imposed internal pressure, right? And you may be more prone to one or the other, but most people fall into one of these at some point in their spiritual path. And knowing that hopefully makes you kinder to each other and kinder to yourself rather than critical or defensive. Yeah. So if we talk about performative practice, this is, for example, say your community values the Vajrayana and Guru Yoga. So you make sure to list all your tantric practices and gurus in a casual conversation in order to feel secure and high status, right? Right? It's like the laughter of recognition, I feel. Okay. And pressurized practice, for example, I should practice because death is coming and I have a perfect human rebirth. It's the should, right? So performative practice, the potential pitfall here is that you collect gurus and empowerments like baseball cards. Yeah, and then you get overwhelmed by your practice commitments. And so you race through them or you avoid them and then are flooded by shame and defensiveness that they aren't being done properly. Yeah, happens. Yeah. You're like, not to me, but I've seen it. And it's something that's really common, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, where you are inspired you are uplifted, you really do genuinely want to level up your practice. And then you bite off more than you can chew, and you bite off more than the community content has to offer you in terms of support. And so you wind up with promises that are very hard to keep because you don't have enough connection to the resources that support them. Whether it's ongoing teachings, whether it's just a good recommended reading list, whether it's a practice group, whatever the case may be, you don't know what to do with these promises you've made when the Lama comes to town and then goes again. It happens, right? It's really normal. And, so then you're flooded with this guilt and shame of, I'm not doing it right, but I promised to do it. I think there are ways to learn about it more, but as soon as I look at them, they're translated by scholars, not by practitioners. And so it's dense and heady and full of hair splitting that I don't really get. And then when I was with the Lama, I felt so happy, so inspired. My heart was moving, my chakras were happy, it was magical. And now here I am all by myself, feeling a little bit like, wah, wah. Right, so that happens, yeah? Do you agree this happens sometimes? Okay. So that's we just have to kind of name it as this is very normal and it is preventable, but it also may be too late. And now we have to do a little bit of recalibration. And so, all right, stay tuned. Pressurized practice, the potential pitfall here is that your practice becomes a chore to finish in order to be good, right? Rather than a method to reconnect and deepen connection to your core values, right? It's something you're checking off, like I should do this, I'm supposed to do this. So there's a lot of different examples of both of these, right? Like if you think of performative practice, you might think of people who come into a spiritual space with a certain kind of clothing, right? Or a certain kind of set of tattoos or a certain kind of jewelry, or they're always muttering mantras under their breath. And it's got a little bit of a ta-da to it, right? It's not like they're genuinely in their practice and they happen to be wearing these clothes because these are the only clothes they have. It's like they're adopting a Tibetan affect or an Indian affect. And there's an excessive use of namaste. There's an excessive use of, oh, tachidelic. There's exclamations of, oh, Madhukame, oh, the Buddha, and it's like cringe, yes? And it's usually born from a really sweet place initially of just wanting to be more in the Dharma. They really want to be more in the Dharma, more connected to their practice. And then it has fragility and pride and insecurity all around it. And it almost becomes the opposite effect of what they want. What they want, or what we want, is to connect to our community, to connect to our practice, to feel nourished by it. And what all of that kind of performative stuff winds up doing is putting people off. Yeah, they either think, oh, wow, they're a super Buddhist. I can't live up to that. We can't be friends. Or that's not Buddhism. You're not doing it right. You're creeping me out. It's a cult. Right? So it has the opposite effect of what it wants to do, which is to connect more deeply. And in a way, it's kind of a natural developmental stage in terms of a spiritual practitioner, where you are kind of like getting the accoutrement of the spiritual path you've chosen. Right? Like you might go on a real like deep dive onto the internet of what is the best meditation cushion. You're like buckwheat, cotton, uproot. What is that called? I don't even know how to say it right. And you're like, what is the best kind? Forgetting that you could just take your bed pillow and fold it in half. Yeah, your bed pillow for your head, fold it in half, sit on it, wedge, done, ergonomic, right? You could get a cheap, crappy one from the thrift store for 50 cents with people's sweat stains all over it and gross. It's for your bum, who cares? But we like kind of get this like, rather than just get straight to my meditation practice with the stuff I have at my house, I gotta buy stuff, right? And I'm gonna need a mala, I'm gonna need prayer beads. Okay, yeah, sandalwood, classic, plastic even, sure. And then you're like, oh no, vortex, maybe tiger's eye, or maybe amethyst. Actually, what does that say about me if I have amethyst? Then you go into a gem deep dive and you're like, oh no, actually rose quartz really brings out the love in my life. Yeah, rose quartz. And then you forget that the whole point was a counting tool, right? It's a counting tool. You could use matchsticks. You could use pebbles, right? You could use some like plastic beads your kid has. You could have some Mardi Gras beads someone threw at you 20 years ago in an embarrassing youthful moment. It's a counting tool, right? So what we want to do is like not become pretentious, But what we wind up, or materialistic, but what winds up happening is that we're a little overwhelmed by the enormity of practice. So we're looking for something bite-sized. You know, like, okay, I don't know about developing mantra practice and the elaborate visualizations and all of the inner work of channels, winds, and drops and getting my bodhicitta motivation really clear and renunciation and correct view, but I could buy something and then I will have done something for my spiritual path. And then you get that kind of instant gratification of, I'm moving in the right direction. I did something, right? So it's really human. It's really natural. And there are more effective, more skillful ways to kind of have that instant gratification feeling of, I've created a good external container to support my inner work. The main one being like clean the house a little, make a spot where you sit. Yeah. And, you know, if you live in an RV, clean the RV a little, find a spot on your bed where you sit. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, but we psych ourselves up because like we touch this thing that we're so inspired by, but then the content is so vast, we get overwhelmed and paralyzed and can only do a few simple things. And that's humbling, right? To say, okay, I've studied for this many years. And right now my practice is meditating on the breath for 5 minutes and then doing a Lam Rim prayer. And that's it. That's amazing. That's amazing. That you feel like, oh God, I've got to have a 2-hour thing and it's got to look like this and feel like that. It's too much pressure. So if you're looking for kind of external sources of validation for your practice and you're getting performative, and then you catch yourself getting performative, you might get a little defensive or a little critical or a little judgy of other people and miss the point where you can just diffuse it by noticing it, laugh at yourself and pivot. You don't need a whole story about why it's only fair that you wound up this way or look how worse other people are. Just drop it, shift. You know better, you just forgot, it's okay. How wonderful it is you found a path that you love. Okay? Then in terms of like pressurized practice, the multitude of shoulds, yeah, the should of death is coming, I have a perfect human rebirth, if I waste it, I'm bad, hand slap, right? That one, we don't want that one. But we can also have the like inspiration that has gotten attachment co-opting it. So we are genuinely inspired. We genuinely want to practice. We're not shooting all over ourselves. We want to, but then all the things we want to do pile up into one moment and we feel like we have to do them simultaneously and we pop a fuse. Yeah, this happens. So you've pressurized it rather than breathed into it and made a really sustainable, gentle pace for yourself. Of, okay, I know many things, I can do fewer things. What is the first thing? Gentle steps, gentle scheduling. Do you know what I mean? So when we're looking at these, we just have to make it really personal and specific and not get into the whole shame, guilt, defensiveness, criticalness, comparing ourselves to others. Like all of that just makes it more complicated. It's a strategic thing of nuts and bolts, getting your practice realigned. And then we make it too complicated by justifying all our weirdness. It's like all your weirdness is because of afflictions and suffering and ignorance, just like everything else. It's fine, move on. Do you know what I mean? We really do overcomplicate it. So when we're looking at some remedies for spiritual practice, there's a lot of options. Make it your own. But for performative practice, you could think, okay, I feel real or imagined peer pressure. Real or imagined, I feel it. Pressure to practice the Vajrayana and Guru Yoga or some other practice, right? And you can notice that first. Just notice that that is a feeling of being in a certain environment, particularly a Tibetan Buddhist environment where the Vajrayana is so intrinsically woven in that it's hard to kind of untangle them. So notice that, and then you transform the tension into curiosity. Why is the community so enthusiastic for this practice? And you might even be like correctly critical as opposed to harshly judgmentally critical and think, oh, maybe they like it because of the smells and bells. ooh, smells and bells, right? You go to Upaya or something, you're just sitting quietly in a black room. Here we're like, color vomit, blah, also smells. Oh, it's exciting. Our sensors are excited. Look at all the colors. Some of it is that, and it's okay to acknowledge that. Yeah. Some of the community's enthusiasm for the practices might not be from a healthy place, right? Sometimes people have guru yoga aspirations and aspirations to connect with the guru in these transformative ways because they want to give up responsibility for making choices in life. Life is really hard. We don't know what to do. You, smart, amazing person who I'm going to decide is enlightened, tell me. It's too hard. Just tell me what to do. Tell me who to marry. Tell me to get ordained. Tell me to go and retreat. Tell me this, tell me that, because I don't want to take responsibility for my choices or their consequences. Life's too hard. That is not the correct reason to find a guru, right? Like we know that just as a human with logic. But it's normal and it's common, right? It's very common. So you're curious, why does the community love this practice? And have a critical eye that's not a mean critical eye. Be self-referent and self-aware and notice I could fall into that pitfall very easily myself. Or I do fall into that pitfall very easily myself. And then what would be the healthy reasons to be so excited about this practice? Oh, I hear that Tantra, the Vajrayana, is quicker to get to enlightenment. And sentient beings need me now. Right? There are so many people, never mind all sentient beings, just like a couple of sentient beings who I wish I could help, and I really can. I can help them take the edge off. I can feed them a meal. I can tell them a joke. I can maybe occasionally offer them something profound, but I really can't get to the heart of their pain with the skill sets as I have right now. I need to become a Buddha, and I want to become a Buddha quickly for their sake. The Vajrayana offers speed. But the speed is based on how much effort, merit, and difficulty is involved also. So it's going to be faster, not because it's magically easier, right? It's faster because it's harder. Yeah. But you're like, okay, maybe they're enthusiastic because the power of the bodhicitta of this community is let's get to it. Let's not waste time. The enthusiasm could be, these are really modern applications in Dharma that I can really see the ancient sources of. Like you can think about like cognitive behavioral therapy, or you can think about all kinds of vagus nerve, somatic grooviness, whatever the kids are talking about these days, and realize that Tantra touches all of those wisdoms and that none of those new methodologies are actually that new. They're just kind of headlined differently now. Right, they're signposted differently now, but that the Vajrayana contained all of those methods, EMDR, right? All of the cool things that people do nowadays, Tantra touches those bases. How cool it is to find such an efficient practice. Maybe that's why they're enthusiastic. So you're just playing with curiosity rather than kind of succumbing to the pressure. You're like, oh, I feel the pressure. I feel a tension. I feel it like somehow being pushed to do something. How about I just take that tension and use it for curiosity? Yeah, it's a lot more skillful, and then it makes it a lot more fun. And when you actually wind up engaging or re-engaging after a period of disillusionment, it's going to be more effective. So the strategy here is like develop clearer, more specific questions. Clearer, more specific questions to ask senior students in your community, and the teachers and the gurus, but just like the senior students who seem to be all in, gung-ho about it, ask them why. Like not invasive way, but like, can I ask you about your practice? Is it okay? And then study with more intention and focus. We sometimes are like waiting to be spoon-fed the information. The teachers come to the Dharma centers, and most Dharma centers have a combination of periodical teachers, who are there occasionally, and mainstay teachers who are doing a continuous program. And it may or may not synchronize with your level of practice. It's useful to just keep showing up anyway, to be around a community of practitioners. But then on the side, like, become intentional about your study. Here's what I want to learn more about. Instead of looking around externally, somebody teach me, like, how about you just find in the library where that lives? And then what happens is you've taken more responsibility for your practice. Your questions get a lot more specific and clear for when the Lama comes to town. And you're asking one of those knee-jerk questions with paragraphs of context and all full of kind of convoluted ambiguity, all full of justifications and preambles and disclaimers. And you just like ask the question, like, why is medicine Buddha blue? You know, like you can kind of just cut to the chase because you've thought about it before the class. So you're taking responsibility for your practice, but you're not all by yourself. You're just utilizing the tools that exist a lot more efficiently. So then pressurized practice, for example, you could think death is coming and I have a perfect human rebirth. So I'll explore and focus on my priorities and minimize distractions. Not should, but could, right? Not should, but could. So it's the same content, but a whole different kind of application of it of, okay, what do I do with the fact that death is coming? What do I do with the fact that I have a really perfect human rebirth for the spiritual path? Okay, I've just got to focus and explore and then get my priorities in order and minimize the things that diffuse that. You know, I just got to kind of fine tune it. And how wonderful it is to be reminded of that. Not to be slapped in the face and told to wake up, but be gently shaken awake and see the sun. It's a very different vibe and you're awake either way, but gently shaken awake by your own good heart and looking at the sun and kind of blinking and kind of coming to life that way. It's probably going to be a nicer day than having been abruptly kicked out of bed. Yeah, and then you flood your system with 3 cups of coffee and then you're grumpy and not sure why. Right? So the strategy here can be to develop a gentle daily discipline. A gentle daily discipline is a lot more effective than a big push every now and then. And it's humbling because it's so modest and so ordinary, but it's the thing that actually creates sustainable change. And it doesn't even have to be on your meditation cushion. It could be just sitting down at the end of the day, cup of tea, put your feet up, pet the dog, have a think. Or some journaling in a non-regimented, tight way. Like buy yourself a pretty notebook you like, sure, rock on, but like don't make it a chore, make it a joy, make it part of your wind down, stuff like that. So those are just some thoughts. Do you have any responses to those thoughts that you'd like to share so far? Any ideas that are coming up or blockages that you'd like to ask about? There's one in the room. The microphone is coming. Yeah, go for it, Mary.
Remember, interesting presentation. That I find that pressurized practice, probably because of how I encounter Dharma, who my teachers have been, and finishing, doing. I don't want to say what I'm doing, but doing the on that. And I think I was also blessed to have other teachers who recognized that I had an internalized, pressurized kind of approach. And also when your body can't sustain it. So it's kind of like taking full circle. And but I really appreciate that presentation because it just really hits. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when we're talking about Dharma with our friends, if we can be brave enough to have these kind of conversations, as opposed to the kind of like needing to prove something or defend something, but the like, I'm really struggling here, or I'm inspired here, but am I getting carried away? Energy adjustments, energy connections, this kind of thing. Yeah, did you have that? No. Sure. a couple of glasses. So we're going to use the mic. Yeah, we're tired.
I was with them moisturized quite a bit and sort of having some ups and downs with that. But I think um the point of it is really important for me. So I guess I've tried to have compassion with myself if I'm not fully feeling sort of in the road.
Yeah.
The to at least fall into the discipline. And then I'm going to get inspired and like that. So anyways, I guess I wanted to ask about like the discipline part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's a really important point. And we need to hear the word discipline and have the connotation self-care. When we hear discipline, we should feel this is self-care. And it's the kind of self-care that you feel really happy about your day at the end of the day. You don't have that kind of regretful day of that was a waste. You really pursued purpose. And maybe no one but you knows what a triumph the day was because you were just quietly working on stuff in your mind. But the kind of discipline that says there are certain core values and core practices that I will connect with come what may, whether I feel like it or not on the surface, they are the things that I have always valued. So the surface me might get distracted and agitated and have all sorts of excuses, but I know the depth of my heart has always valued them, like peace, like compassion, right? Something like that. And so it's like your discipline has like touchstones that are nourishing for you, that kind of give the day meaning, whatever kind of day it is, a boring day, a dramatic day, an exciting day, a problem day. All days can be under the heading of the spiritual path because the inner discipline is I will keep returning to the touchstones of wisdom and compassion, or whatever yours are. And then the discipline in terms of schedule has got to be what can you do sustainably on your worst day? Not what you can do sustainably at your best. We often make these plans, especially around New Year's, of like, on a really good day, I can do this amount of practice at this step and this amount of study at this step. And then we make this plan for ourselves, like based on absolutely no sniffles, perfect night's sleep, everyone in our life behaving properly, no drama, pets not needing the vet, all the things, and it's like we're dooming ourselves to failure. And then we just kind of throw up our hands and give up on ourselves or the path. So the discipline of schedule has to be, what can I do on my worst day? Come what may. And then on a good day, when you've got more space, you add as a bonus, not a pressure. And it changes everything so fundamentally. So discipline is so important, absolutely so important, but the way we hear discipline shouldn't have like negative connotations, pressurized connotations, like I don't know, like a meanness towards yourself, like you're a bad kid that needs to be punished into Buddhahood or something weird. Yeah, we bring all these weird associations to the idea of discipline, and it should be like, I'm caring for this mind. This mind has the potential for enlightenment. I have to take care of it. And so it's like the discipline of like, I don't know, washing your grandmother's tea set every time you use it because it's an antique family heirloom. And so you don't let it just sit and get gross. You always wash it, even if you're lazy about other dishes. I don't know what a good example would be, but you know what I mean? Like you have a discipline of caring for it because it's important, because it's precious. And your mind is so precious. And it can get so easily pulled into habits that waste that potential for years and eons and lifetimes. And it's not ever lost, and you'll never lose its potential, but right now it could be utilized to help sentient beings suffer less, and you could suffer less, right? So it's like, oh, okay, let's take care of it. So your discipline is let's take care of this mind. Let's develop this mind's potential. And then it's got a warmth to it. Do you know what I mean? So yes, discipline, very important, sustainable schedule, very important, but something that's got that warmth and that kindness towards yourself and that kind of upliftedness of, this is good for me, this is good for us. And this is the amount I can do daily. And sometimes I'll do more, but not like I have to do more or else I'm bad. You know? Yeah. Other thoughts, folks on Zoom? I'm sorry about our audio, but you can pop stuff in the. You might be working. This is very exciting. Does someone want to try on Zoom saying something random? Omani Peme Hum.
Can you hear us?
Do you want to try something?
Can you guys hear us?
Hi.
Hello? Hello?
No, she's waving.
No.
She's unmuted. She's saying things we can't hear them. Darn it. Audio issues. You can type it in the chat. Apologies, everyone. All right, it was worth a try. Other thoughts about the things that, I don't know, what are we going to Marie Kondo our practice? What sparks joy? We got to Marie Kondo our practice. What sparks joy in your practice? Like, and what no longer serves, you know? Because so there could be things that you used to do early in your practice that were really fundamental and really helped create a container. And now sometimes we do them out of some kind of obligation, but obligation to who? Right? Like the Buddhas do not need you to do anything in particular for them to love you, right? A little bit beyond that nonsense, right? So you're like, oh no, I didn't do my water bowls today. And they're like, yeah, we know, we don't care, whatever. Like it's for you, it's for your mind, it's to develop a habit of generosity, it's to get merit. We will like you either way, right? You know, and so you're kind of like thinking about what are the routines of my practice and do they have authenticity with them still? And how can I return to authenticity with them if there's something that I once loved and was a beautiful ritual and now I've kind of taken it for granted or it's lost some spark? So kind of a yearly dust off and recalibrate is really helpful for getting yourself back into the swing of it. So there's some nice comments from the folks online. Bridget's saying that Dharma friends spark joy. Indeed, yes, Dharma friends spark joy. Then we've got one that says, how do we find a balanced way of practicing that avoids both pressured ego-driven performance and the complacency of laziness or mediocrity? Indeed, that is the question. Death is coming, right? And you have a perfect human rebirth. Those remain true. And if they're not hitting the spot for you, you're allowed to pivot to other teachings. Like there's so many teachings out there, right? So I remember a recent Mahamudra retreat with the teacher at the college where I work, Yangzi Rinpoche. He was saying that sometimes when you're getting distracted, the advice is, you know, remember death or remember perfect human rebirth. But you could also think of the merit field and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are uplifting and supporting you. Or you could think of sentient beings around you and the fact that you love them. Those also can be antidotes to distraction. Those also can be fuel for practice, right? Inspiration or loving kindness. So it's like if the traditional strategies aren't doing it for you, don't keep hitting your head against the wall, just use a different one. The Buddha probably taught the one that you need, right? But we might have only been shown a couple. You know, there's all these different traditions of Buddhism, and they're not huge differences in worldview, they're differences in approach, and they are to suit the myriad dispositions of disciples. So for some people, the smells and bells and visualizations and mantra and elaboration of the Vajrayana tradition is the very thing that makes them focused and deep. And for other people, it's very distracting, it's very overwhelming, and something very simple like meditating on the mind itself or a mental image of the Buddha or the breath steadies them and brings depth. And it's not like one is better than the other, right? It's really about where is your affinity. And you choose according to affinity, then you're not feeling like you're letting down some part of Buddhism or some teacher you've had. It's like, they're just, here are tools. Take what is useful. We want you to be happy. We want you to be kind. We want you to be happy and kind in the deepest possible way and to bring out that in others. So take what's good for you. Yeah, there's not going to be like a Dharma competition in the Dharmakaya minds of all the Buddhas. Like, hey, they chose Tara over Medicine Buddha. Oh, harumph, and then Tara's like in a corner sulking. Like, come on, right? It's not how it works, right? So, kind of bring your senses to, like if you're exercising, and some people use the Stairmaster. Does anyone use a Stairmaster? I don't know if we use Stairmasters. I'm dating myself. Whatever one uses in terms of machines, as opposed to whatever one uses without machines. If it makes you healthy, use what makes you healthy. If it hurts you, stop using it. It doesn't mean it's bad in and of itself. It's just not the right tool for you. Do you know what I mean? So again, we kind of have to take out all of this like justification, excuses, all these things that kind of diminish our energy. Yeah. So then another piece of all this is spiritual bypassing. Do we know what spiritual bypassing is? Show of hands, nods. Yes, you know it all too well. Okay. So just to kind of revisit. So it's a term coined by John Wellwood in the 80s, and it's brilliant. It's not like he was the one that invented the concept. It was so well known, he found a word for it. Basically, spiritual bypassing often adopts a rationale based on using absolute truth to deny or disparage relative truth, right? Spiritual bypassing involves imposing on oneself higher truths that lie far beyond one's immediate existential condition. So an example would be you're diagnosed with cancer. You say to yourself, oh, it's just my karma. I was very, very bad. That would be spiritual bypassing. You get diagnosed with cancer, be like, I did not want to be diagnosed with cancer. I don't want cancer. Cancer sounds scary. Start there, for the love of God. Right, start there. I did not want this. And then, what are ways of thinking about it that settle my agitation, that might even move me into transformation? But what happens to us is that we know how we are supposed to think in terms of Dharma, or in terms of psychology, or in terms of whatever wisdom we're pursuing. So we tell ourselves we are thinking that way before we're ready to. Yeah. Somebody cuts you off in traffic abruptly and dangerously, and you say to yourself, oh, I have so much patience for people that drive like that. They're probably rushing to the emergency room to care for a loved one. That's what they're doing. And you tell yourself pretty stories rather than first saying, I was scared, now I'm mad, right? Start with where you are, because if you keep jumping over what's actually happening to you, that disconnect blocks progress. And that disconnect is what leads to fundamentalism and fanaticism or despair, right? So we have to bridge the gap of how we want to think and how we're actually thinking. Nothing is more cringe than an inauthentic person who has a pretense of bodhicitta, but is seething with rage. Yeah, or seething with depression. It's like, it has to be real. It has to be where you are. What do you do in terms of, performance for sentient beings? Well, nothing except just be polite, right? Be polite by all means. Social skills, try. But we do not need to have a pretense of practice above and beyond what is actually true. And at the same time, we need aspirations. So someone cuts you off in traffic in a dangerous way and you feel scared and then mad. You're like, oh, that was scary. Whew, I'm a little mad now. Okay, what do I need to do to come back to peace? And then from peace, transformation. And maybe I just need to pull over and breathe for a second and drink some water and settle my little nervous system, which got all jangly. Simple as that. Then when your peace comes back to you, you can say, all right, what's the method that I like today? What's the method that's going to work today? Is it compassion for people that drive in that way because it's born from anger, agitation, ignorance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is it, I created the karma to experience this because I was that guy once upon a time, maybe just this life, maybe just yesterday or adolescence, or in a previous life with a horse-drawn carriage. Who knows when it happened, but I was that guy at some point, right? Or maybe it's, just the suffering of being scared in traffic is something I could do Tonglen with, giving and taking practice with. Who else is scared in traffic? Who else is grumpy in traffic? How about I take all of that on and give it to the self-cherishing thought and give over happiness, peace, well-being. You know, there's a million practices you can do with it, but if you're kind of telling yourself, quick practice before you find your peace, you're going to miss the impact of the practice. And then gradually you start to think there is something wrong with Dharma practice, it doesn't work, or there's something wrong with you and you can't live up to it. And neither of those are true, right? The problem was the bypass. So being able to know yourself in spiritual bypass is one of the easiest ways to overcome it, but you have to own what your version looks like. If you think you never do spiritual bypassing, you are lacking self-awareness, right? Yeah, unless you're already a Buddha, and there may be Buddhas in the room, but everybody does this in some form or other. So just kind of sit for a second. When do you talk over the top of what you're actually feeling and tell yourself you're feeling something else? Can you sit with it for a moment, just reflectively? I'm feeling one thing and telling myself I'm feeling another because that's how I should feel. Or I'm thinking something and then I'm telling myself I'm thinking something else because that's how I should think. It's very different than transforming your thoughts. Transforming your thoughts means you have met them first. Yeah, I did not want to have cancer. Now I will use cancer to open up more pathways of compassion and to exhaust negative karma and to work for the welfare of all sentient beings and not waste the rest of my life. And now I'm going to do that with it. But first, let me sit with, I did not want this. And now I want it. Yeah. Give it a few beats like that. Do you have any resistances or objections or any kind of new connections being made related to this whole spiritual bypassing conversation? Is it something you can see in yourself occasionally? Yeah, some chapters in your life more than others, some scenarios more than others. Sometimes it's born from shifting from beginner's mind to feeling like I should know this already. Right? You know, the Zen tradition, what Suzuki Roshi, whoever said, Zen mind, beginner's mind. But as soon as we start identifying as a senior student or an old student, sometimes our spiritual bypassing gets worse because we feel like we should know better already. Because you do know better, but that doesn't mean you can do better yet. That takes time. The doing better has lag time. So like as long as you can feel beginner, the more fresh your practice will be. And you can be a beginner for 50 years. And actually, the only non-student is a Buddha, right? That is the path of no more learning. Yeah. So, you know, I love this about some traditions. Like in the Jewish tradition, there's such a lifetime learning love. It's one of the very cool kind of stereotypical components of the Jewish tradition. I found this when I lived in the Middle East, and they just have no shame about being old and studying something, right? But we have kind of a funny relationship to like mature age students at university or, you know, kind of old practitioners who are doing basic things. Like we have all sorts of weird stories and traps around this. And, you know, what I loved about the place where I did my nuns training at Chenrezig Institute in Australia was that the nuns had kind of a unspoken agreement that we would all go to everything. So we would go to the beginners public talk for brand new students who weren't even Buddhists. And we would go to the advanced psychology classes for non-Buddhists that was totally secular. And we would go to philosophical tenets, hair splitting nuances, all the deep dive. We would go to all the levels. We just went to everything. And it was such a delight to go to a beginner's class and just have that like, what is the first noble truth? I mean, I taught on it last week, but what do you think it is? You know, and just having that beginner's mind and that delight of learning and not feeling like I should know this already. It's like you do know it already. And also there's always more depth to pursue. Like let yourself be a beginner. It's such a joy. And then you can ask questions and not feel stupid. And if you're starting to think, I can't ask that question, I should know this already, you've fallen into the trap of over-identification as senior student. Yes, can you pass the mic? questions. I'm getting flagged. Okay. So I can see now that I bypass much or more habitually than I thought I would admit. Success. Is spiritual bypassing different from contrived bodhicitta? That's a very good question. That is a very good question. So contrived bodhicitta, as opposed to spontaneous bodhicitta or a realization of bodhicitta or any of these nuances, you know, it's the fake it till you make it philosophy, right? Of I'm going to adopt the attitude that I want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, when in fact that's only occasionally true. And I also want a cup of tea, sometimes with equal emphasis. I want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, 5 to 10 minutes. Now I really want that cup of tea and I wish sentient beings well, but I'm not thinking about you right now. You know, like if we're honest, right? And the more often you touchstone into, I want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, the more often and heartfelt that is, the more that becomes how you think. And then you have your cup of tea with bodhicitta, right? It's not like you don't get tea then, right? Tea is very important up until Buddhahood. But when you're thinking about contrivance, what you're thinking is, I already believe this. I already love this. I just want it to be more consistent. I want it to become more deep. I have to come back to it. So the contrivance is not a facade. The contrivance is the newness. I forgot how much this was important. I have to remember again. It's different than spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing would be telling yourself you have bodhicitta when you're seething with rage. Yeah. Yeah, being like, no, I really want my mother-in-law to become enlightened, and I really want to become enlightened for her sake, and I really want her all the best. But if she does that one thing one more time, you know, boom to the moon, right? Like, what we have to say to ourselves is, what I would like is to have bodhicitta for my mother-in-law. I don't have a mother-in-law. I would like to have bodhicitta for my mother-in-law. And right now I am angry. How do I adopt an attitude of bodhicitta towards her? At first, I have to think about, do I genuinely want all sentient beings to actualize their fullest potential? Do I want all sentient beings to be free from suffering? Of course I do. Is she also a sentient being? Probably, unless she's a Buddha who's a plant to agitate me and show me ways to practice, in which case, thanks. But let's pretend that she's not, because seems like problematic behaviors. Okay, problematic behaviors come from what? Suffering, afflictions, ignorance. Just like mine. Okay. Back to bodhicitta, right? So you're working yourself into it in a way that took effort. Contrivance kind of means it took effort, it took thought, right? Uncontrived means it did not take effort, it did not take thought, it was built in. But contrived bodhicitta doesn't mean it wasn't bodhicitta, it just took more effort to get your mind in alignment with it. Yeah. When we have uncontrived bodhicitta, all the other thoughts of the day will be informed by that or colored by that. However, you know, profound or mundane the activities seem to be, they're all going to be qualified by that thought. It will take a lot of repetition, sincere repetition from the heart for that to become the case. That repetition we could call merit or good karma, but it's like mental momentum. For something to become true stably, you just have to keep coming back to it. My example for myself has always been the golden rule, right? Do unto others what you would want others to do unto you. Treat others the way you would want to be treated. When did we first hear this? Most of us first heard this when we were 3 years old, 4 years old, maybe Sunday school, who knows where, maybe your grandma. And at the time, you might have thought, well, if I treat others the way I want to be treated, then I won't get in trouble, so I should do that, right? Or people will like me, so I should do that. And it might not have even been that clear and articulated for a child, but that was your reason for doing it, right? I want people to like me, I don't want them to not like me, or I don't want to get in trouble. When you got a little older, and okay, treat others the way you want to be treated. When I treat others the way I want to be treated, I see how we're the same. I see how we're motivated the same. I see how everything is easier if we share. Oh, sharing is good. You know, and like the years go by, the chapters of life go by, and that statement remains true in all of those chapters, but it has more depth as you mature as a person. Until one day, maybe magically at 21, right? You kind of like come to your senses, right? Or whatever age you come to your senses. And you go, I should treat others the way I want to be treated. Oh, it's not new words. It's not new words. They're words you've thought of your whole life periodically, and now the penny dropped. Now they have the ring of truth, not magically out of nowhere, but from repetition. Right? It's from repetition, meeting experience, that it moves from a thought to a way of being or a mind. Only if you believe it, only if you've workshopped it, but that's how the mind works, right? You can train it. So it's not like you should just magically have bodhicitta, and if you don't have it, you're bad. And it's like some intrinsic quality some people have and don't have, like there are good people and bad people. That is nonsense. The people that are good at compassion have worked on compassion, right? The people that are good at bodhicitta have worked on bodhicitta. It was not some intrinsic quality that they had magically from beginningless time. They had it magically from birth. It's because in previous lives they worked on it a lot. So it was easy now. It wasn't always easy. You know, so you give yourself a break and you're like, obviously it just needs more repetition. So if you can hear that, like contrived doesn't mean fake. Contrived means needs effort. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. Any other thoughts or questions about spiritual bypassing? Yeah, go ahead. Pass back.
Talk a little bit about bypassing with emptiness.
It's as if you saw my slides. Here they come. Yes, I can. I'll talk more about spiritual bypassing as it relates to emptiness. We are one slide away from that. Okay. We maybe don't even need this one. We could cut to the chase. You guys are top students, obviously, to feed your ego. I'll say that. Okay, spiritual practice involves freeing consciousness from its entanglements in form, matter, emotions, personality, and social conditioning. In a society like ours, where the whole earthly foundation is weak to begin with, it's tempting to use spirituality as a way of trying to rise above this shaky ground. In this way, spirituality becomes just another way of rejecting one's experience. When people use spiritual practice to try to compensate for low self-esteem, social alienation, or emotional problems, they corrupt the true nature of spiritual practice. Instead of loosening the manipulative ego that tries to control its experience, they are further strengthening it. So this is again from John Wellwood from his book Toward a Psychology of Awakening. For those of you that like psychology and Buddhism, I highly recommend. So it's important to just realize that we are particularly prone to this as Westerners. We're particularly prone to this. Not to say that people in heritage Buddhist societies aren't prone to this. They all have their form, right? It's not like Tibetans are like magical by their nature. They've just had Buddhism in their culture longer. So some of their default behaviors are a little less problematic than ours. You know, thumbs up, Dharma in a culture, right? They're not like magic. It's just that they've had a culture imbued with Buddhism. It helped. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of emptiness, and it's really important that we look at it, there are some classic teachings that are particularly spiritually bypassed. The first one is emptiness, karma, guru devotion, and bodhicitta. So all forms of spiritual practice can be turned into poison, medicine made into poison. When an event occurs, like the event is good, the event is bad, but like a big thing happens and we're trying to use the Dharma to connect in a good way with it. These are the classic topics that get misunderstood. And then often even more complicated are Vajrayana teachings on pure view. So knowing that, let's do the first one. Okay, emptiness. So as John Wellwood said, spiritual bypassing often adopts a rationale based on using absolute truth to deny or disparage relative truth. So absolute truth is emptiness, right? Ultimate truth is that all things are empty of inherent existence. It's a characteristic all things have, right? And relative truth is the truth that we're used to. It's the truth for a deceptive mind. It's the truth for those under the influence of ignorance. It's our truth, right? And it's life seen through the veil of ignorance, to put it really roughly. And sometimes in the beginning, what we might do is we have this mistaken view of emptiness, and we say, in emptiness, there is no harm, the harmer, or the harmed whatsoever, even relatively. These are only names, and therefore not real and don't exist. Do you hear points of accurate philosophy mixed with nihilism? It's like the right words put together wrong. It's really normal. It happens all the time. And this is not the view, but it's what we do. Yeah, it's close to the view, but it's not the view. And that little distinction of not right can create havoc in your life and ruin your ethics, right? So if you feel harmed, it's only because of your ignorance. Do you ever say that to yourself when you're trying to meditate on emptiness? Like, oh, there is no harmer, there is no harm. You're critical, but criticism does not exist from its own side, or anyway karma, or anyway bodhicitta, and you kind of like do this whole loop-de-loop philosophy sandwich, make yourself crazy, not useful, right? Don't do that, right? Get it out, right? It doesn't help. And it's so common. So you have to kind of recognize what's the wrong way of using these teachings and the distortion of these teachings. And then you shift, okay? And you want to sort of use maybe some quote like this one from Lama Tripa, which is, of course, the quote I always use. It's my favorite verse from Lama Tripa, which is, samsara and nirvana lack even an atom of inherent existence, while cause and effect and dependent arising are unfailing. We seek your blessings to discern the import of Nagarjuna's thought, which is that these two are complementary and not contradictory. Yes? So the healthy use of the teaching on emptiness could be, yes, everything lacks inherent existence because it dependently arises. Therefore, this incident didn't come about independently or because of just one thing or person, nor does the significance each person gives to it exist inherently. We all bring our individual experience and karma when reacting to and attributing significance to an event, right? So you're recognizing dependent arising, right? You're recognizing that things do not exist in and of themselves because they dependently arise. And then we draw a frame around one section of dependent arising and say that is the significant part of the story. And we could also shift that frame and put it over here and say that is the significant part of the story. And neither of those is getting the whole story. And what is the whole story? Beginningless. Can we comprehend beginningless time, beginningless mind at our level? No. Too soon, eventually, right? It's going to take a while. However, we are smart cookies. Yes, we know a little bit about history. We know a little bit about psychology, maybe lots about history, maybe lots about psychology. And we recognize patterns and we recognize context and we have a basic understanding of human behavior. We realize everything's contextual. And that when I have made myself too certain about a story, I have missed the point. If I'm too certain, I'm looking at one chapter, not the whole book, right? Or I'm looking through the keyhole at the landscape. If I were to step through the door, it would look differently. We know this, we're logical people, but when we're upregulated and when we're upset, when we're angry, or when we're like really excited, like inspired plus attachment, we just over black and white it. And then as soon as we over black and white it, we have attachment or aversion, chaos, problem, suffering, right? So the correct use of the teachings on emptiness are to cut through the solidness, to cut through the illusion of duality, to cut through the illusion of separateness, not to make yourself feel bad for having emotion, or to make yourself feel stupid for having a story. Right? That's not the point of them, right? Then you've missed the whole method side of the path, all the compassion stuff. But we do this, right? And we make ourselves all icy and like, no, it's just my ignorance that says this. Oh, it's just my karma. Oh, I don't understand emptiness. Or I do understand emptiness and nothing touches me. Hair toss, nothing touches me. I understand emptiness, right? So You know, like what happens when you realize dependent arising, even a couple layers bigger than your original story, is that you can laugh yourself out of the concreteness and you can see the absurdity of overemphasizing one part over the other. And if you can do that, your ego can't double down on its story. But if you go in too hot and tell yourself all the ways that you're wrong, your ego doubles down and becomes the hero or the victim, but it stays the main character. Yeah, and you're not the main character. No one is. That's true. Did that help? Yeah, it's nice to kind of run through this with all the classic teachings, you know, run through it with karma, what's the spiritual bypassing application and what's the healthy application. Bodhicitta, what's the spiritual bypassing, what's the healthy guru devotion, etc. All of these is really useful, especially to make it very personal. Like, what is the trap I fall into? And it might be that some teachings you actually have a good handle on and you really use them very effectively. It's just about remembering it. And then some of them, it's like, actually, I haven't got it tidy enough in my mind to utilize it in daily life yet. So I want to, and I will, but I need to get a little bit clearer on the philosophy before I weave it in to the thoughts I use to recalibrate when I'm distressed. Do you know what I mean? Ish. Okay. Also, this is very boring, but this also is very useful. Go back to the summary definitions and make sure you know what you're saying to yourself. Are you even using Dharma, or have you just made up something with Dharma words? So go back to the summary definitions of the things that you're trying to use as medicine, because if you don't, it will become poison. So summary definitions, relative truth, conventional truth, just remind yourself, what on earth are we even talking about? There's a glossary on Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. It's not a precise debate definition, those are paragraphs long, but it's a short, pithy definition that can get you into, oh, right, this, not that. Yeah, it can tidy you up. So highly recommend a good glossary. And then you remember, worldly conventions are our lived experience. And so we strive not to talk over the top of how we or others are experiencing an incident. Assessing the deepest levels of practice is gradual and delicate. So talking over the top of, you're missing compassion. Yeah, you're like jumping to wisdom, you miss compassion, or you're jumping to compassion and you miss wisdom. Om mani padme hum, right? You need both of them, otherwise not effective. And you will see this when someone is distressed and the people at the Dharma Center are the ones hearing the distress, but they might not have the bandwidth or the space or the time to cope with it. So they give some kind of cliche Dharma answer, kind of to shut them up, right? Like, oh, well, you know, it's all empty. Oh, shucks, right? And it's like, well, that's not helpful, even though it's true. That is not helpful. Don't talk over the top of their emotion, because that is their experience in this moment. And so if you're someone who's a community member and has been around Dharma centers or spiritual communities a long time, there's a certain responsibility for caring for new people and caring for each other that I think is important for us all to take on, which is, where are they right now? Not what's the right answer to give them, but where are they right now? Like, do they just need a sandwich, right? Like, they're going on about this, oh, emptiness that, oh, bodhicitta this. Like, maybe they're very like tired, need a little nap, and they've gotten themselves all worked up. Maybe there's a mental health issue that needs to be addressed, and that probably needs to be addressed before the introduction of philosophy. For some folks, philosophy can help them with their mental health issues. For most people, you need some other tools first, because the Dharma is for relatively stable, healthy people to dig down the next level. So do not talk about identitylessness with someone who has dissociative identity disorder. Not helpful, right? So it's kind of like timing. Who are you talking to? Be a human, right? Thank people, right, for things that they do well. Ask people if they need help, you know, like just be normal through a Dharma lens. Does it make sense? But we see this in all religious communities, all spiritual communities, all Dharma communities. There can be this tendency to then spiritual bypass others. not just yourself. Of whatever's going on for you is too hard for me. Here's a quick fix of something that's kind of true divorced from context. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, right? Off you go. I got things to do, right? Like, then what has practice been for? Is it just, you know, kind of your own spiritual entertainment or intellectual exercise, or is it genuinely for a more harmonious and peaceful society where people have access to transformative practices? Okay, would you like to do a meditation? Yes? Okay, let's do a meditation. Nice straight back. And what we're going to do is a meditation on perfect human rebirth, death, and impermanence in a way that attempts to avoid spiritual bypassing. Okay, so I'm not going to hit all the classic Lam points. You can find those if you want to revisit them. But what I'm going to try and do is help us touch it in the most personal way that we can. And then by all means, revisit the technical points because they are, of course, profound also. So first, just be with the body. Be with the body and know the body for a moment. There are parts of the body that are comfortable. There are parts of the body that are uncomfortable. Areas that are relaxed and areas that are tense. See if you can bring a compassionate gaze to the awareness of your physical experience. And see if that compassionate gaze can allow some level of tension to release and some level of balance to return and strengthen. Nothing forced. And then of all your physical experiences, gently zero in on the breath if that feels comfortable, or another sensation if you prefer. And use that one physical sensation to steady your focus and allow surface distractions to settle. Just the breath or something else that you feel safe with. And then reviving your motivation, thinking I'm doing this meditation in order to reconnect with my heart and my wisdom, in order to develop them with authenticity and with joy and insight for the benefit of all living beings. You can rephrase that in words that resonate for you. And so shifting to analysis, the Lamrim explains that a perfect human rebirth has 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, which basically means that we're free from certain kinds of suffering, and we're supported by specific types of inner and outer resources. And just naming the truth of those can increase our confidence in our pursuit of purpose and path. And so let yourself think of the sufferings you're free from. There might be anger and angry people in your life, but you're not surrounded by hatred or consumed by hatred. You're free from that. Anger comes and goes. And there are times when there is fear and anxiety, but you're not pursued like a prey animal, constantly seeking shelter. There is safety in your life, even if it could be more stable. And while there might be a fair amount of attachment in your life and materialistic tendencies, you're not so drunk with attachment that it's blocked your empathy. You're not so flooded with pleasure that you're drunk with it and don't notice the struggles of others. What a freedom it is to not be lost in those, consumed by hatred, consumed by fear, consumed by attachment. The freedom of having spaciousness around those tendencies is amazing. And for a moment, give yourself your own personal examples of how you are free. Different ways that you're free internally and externally. List them for yourself. And shift to thinking about what you have. We have connection and support for any resource, any knowledge that we want. How many libraries just in this one city? How much information accessible online? We have this incredible access. And this body we have might have its aches and pains. It might have areas we wish functioned better, but we still have enough physical independence to access the wisdom we want, to be able to pursue it. We're not yet lost in dementia. We're not yet lost in so much physical pain we can't focus. This body is still a good vehicle. For now. And we have friends, family, community, even though they're imperfect, even though they're not as stable or reliable as we wish they were. There are some kind people in our life. There are some supportive people we can connect with. And what's more, there are communities of practitioners who are enough in alignment with our beliefs that it's supportive. And so again, spend a moment just reflecting on what you have that could or does support your spiritual path. Make the list for yourself. And so in some way that feels authentic and true for you, allow yourself to feel abundant. You have been loved, you are loved. There is support, there is access. There is freedom, there is opportunity. And this mind of ours has infinite potential, each one of us, to free itself from patterns of suffering, to develop itself into everlasting happiness, deepest contentment. And all of that related to this particular rebirth, this particular life and name and body is absolutely finite. Even if we believe in future lives, this life will end, death is certain. And that might seem so obvious and self-evident, but allow yourself to move into the fact that death is not only certain, but its time is uncertain. Death is not going to wait for us to get our practice organized, or to finish certain projects, or to have certain conversations. Most people die with unfinished business, internally and externally. Death is not going to wait for us to get our act together. This precious life, with all its abundance, could end tonight. And then we might be lucky enough to have another human life back to back. We still have to grow up and remember and revisit the path and build it again, suffer adolescence again, all of those things again. And so let yourself land on a conclusion if it feels real. We must practice now, not just practice in general, plan that we'll get to someday. Now, gently closing escape routes of distraction, habits of indulgence that don't serve us. Just focusing on this path that we do love. Because at the time of death, the only thing we have to rely on is how much we've trained this mind. We cannot be injected with peace, maybe morphine, but it's not the same. Our friends and family might rally and support us, but they can't force transformation or joy on us, no matter how much love is there. They are conditions, not the cause of our mental state. And so because death is certain, time is uncertain, and that at the time, the only thing that helps is the Dharma or our practice, our mental development. What feels like the priority for your life, for your purpose. If you were to tell yourself what is your vocation, your orientation, your touchstone, articulate it to yourself. Underline it with your mind. Whether that priority is peace or transformation, the search itself or bodhicitta. Now become curious about what distracts you from pursuing it. Where is energy wasted? What thoughts, what behaviors pull you from your path? And what thoughts and behaviors focus it, strengthen it, give it joy and life? You don't need to have all the answers, but be curious about what you do know and explain it back to yourself. Strengthen your wisdom. And gently leave the analysis and leave all the questions open and curious. Doesn't have to be tidy, but think that all of the energy you put into these thoughts, may it go towards the deepening and developing of your spiritual path for the benefit of all living beings. And if you feel comfortable, we can do the dedication together. Sangye Druyode Droha Chikam Mahadura Dehi Saha Sho Jantu Samcharam Boshe Make Pam Ge Gyurchi Ke Panyam Pame Payam Gone Gondu Pella. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. A good night, and we'll continue on these themes tomorrow if you're able. And yeah, bring your questions, bring your qualms.